Do you want to grow big, beautiful, luscious cabbage, but you don't know how? I got you. Hey y'all, I'm Brian here from Redleaf. Please be sure to subscribe and like this video. It really helps out our channel so we can keep sharing all the abundance with you. One of my all-time favorite things to grow in the garden is cabbage. So I wanted to share with you how we grow it here at Redleaf for the most abundant and beautiful heads of cabbage. First thing you should know, cabbages are members of the Brassica family. So they are related to broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, mustard, all those things. They are cruciferous vegetables and they really thrive in cooler, moist climates. So ideally, you want to get cabbages started in very early spring if your climate allows for that. They like it cool, they like it moist, and they do like full sun. So early spring really is the prime time for them. There are so many different types of cabbages out there. So I think the best place to get started is deciding what kind of cabbage you want to grow. Different types do vary a little bit in the types of conditions and how long they take to mature. So that's something definitely to be conscious of. Now, cabbages are something that transplant quite well. So it's definitely something I would feel very comfortable getting at a garden center. But I think the most cost-effective way to grow an abundance of cabbages is to start seeds indoors earlier on in the season. A general rule of thumb is if you want to get something started indoors, you want to start it at least 2 months before you transplant them in the garden, like 6 to 8 weeks. So for example, here in Tennessee, we are setting out our cool crops end of March, beginning of April. So I actually started these seedlings at the end of January. It's really nice to start seedlings indoors because you really get to expedite that growing process. It's really wonderful getting that head start. A word of caution, if you are starting seedlings indoors, please, please, please be sure to harden off your seedlings or acclimate them to outdoors before you transplant them in the garden. I do have a video that I will link here to share with you how to do that. It is essential to do so. Otherwise, you risk scorching or burning your plants as soon as you transplant them in the garden. They have to be toughened up and hardy by the time they are transplanted in the garden so that, they don't die. I learned that the hard way. Now that my seedlings are hardened and toughened up, it's time to plant them. Let's go. I'm so excited. One of my all-time favorite varieties of cabbages to grow is the giant Sapporo cabbage. Look at how lovely these little seedlings are. They look so good. These are the cabbages that we are honestly quite famous for. I don't know if you have been following along for a while. Every year I have to grow a giant cabbage named Audrey. This is her. This is baby Audrey. I'm also going to be growing golden acre cabbages and blue dynasty cabbages. Before planting them, let's take a look at the garden bed. I want to share with you how I prepared this bed for my baby cabbages. Oh, here she is in all of her glory. If you want to see the deep dive video on how I amend all of my garden beds for a new season, please be sure to check out that video. I will link it here. But some things I definitely want you to pay attention to in this bed specifically for cabbages is amending your soil and adding plenty of nutrition and goodness to your soil is essential for cabbages. I want you to take a nice good look at the soil that we have in here. I have a really nice mix of compost, worm castings, sand for some extra drainage. You want to make sure that your soil is very well amended and nutritious for cabbages because cabbages, really anything in the Brassica family, they are heavy feeders. They love nutrients, they love to eat, so please be sure to supply them with all of that goodness. I also want you to notice the mulch that I have placed on top of this bed. Mulch is so, so, so essential, really to any garden bed that you have, but specifically for cabbages because cabbages like a lot of moisture. They want to be well watered throughout the season. And mulch is really, really great for making sure that your soil remains moist even on the warmer days. Mulch prevents the sun from hitting the soil directly and evaporating the moisture within the soil. It also does a really wonderful job of protecting the ecology underneath the soil, so like your microorganisms that are all very, very beneficial for the overall health of your plants. For my cabbages and really any vegetable bed that I have in the garden, I like to use hay hay or straw because it doesn't leach a lot of acidity into the soil. I'm not exactly sure on the science of it, but I know as hay or straw breaks down, the type of ecology and ecosystem that it creates in the soil is a lot more beneficial to vegetables than if you were to use wood chips or pine needles. So we love our hay. We're very fortunate here that we have a pole barn at the back end of the property where the previous tenants of this property actually stored a lot of their hay. So we have some really wonderful aged hay. Please make sure that if you are sourcing hay, wherever you are sourcing it from, that they haven't sprayed any pesticides on it because those can leach into the soil and that would be absolutely tragic. All right, with all that said, let's get ready to plant some cabbage. Something very important to keep in mind with cabbages is that they need a lot of room to grow, especially with the larger varieties of cabbage like this giant Sapporo cabbage. I want to reserve at least 3 feet of diameter for this cabbage to grow to its fullest potential. Honestly, these can get up to 4 feet in diameter, especially with those big leaves bellowing out. They need a lot of room. So that's definitely something you want to make sure you are keeping in mind when planting your cabbages. I do have our garden plan posted on our website so you can see everything that we are planting this season. But there are really wonderful things that you can do to really maximize the space when planting cabbages. So you don't have a lot of like empty space throughout the growing season. All the real estate you have in the garden is so important. First, I'm going to lay out my cabbages and then explain some companion plants. This bed in particular is going to be my cabbage patch. So I am growing a majority of my cabbages in this bed. I like to place them before planting them, just so I have a much clearer picture of what everything's going to be looking like in this bed. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We are like really planting right now. Oh my gosh, the season has begun. So as you can see, they are quite spaced out. But like I said, as they grow, you will see how much they fill up this bed. They really do take over. But a really great way to maximize the space in the bed is to plant things that mature a lot more quickly than the cabbages do. Some cabbages take 90 days, some take 65. There's a variety that takes 45 days to mature. With the ones that take longer to mature, a really nice thing to companion plant around those cabbages would be leafy greens or some fast growing root veggies like carrots. Those things will fill in the gaps really wonderfully and mature by the time, the cabbages start growing into that space. Some other really great companion plants for these would be onions. Onions also, double as a really good repeller for certain pests you don't want in the garden. I really love planting dill and geranium alongside my cabbages as well. Dill in particular because they attract a parasitic wasp that feeds on cabbage worm, which is something we deal with heavily here. And I really like geranium because geranium actually repels cabbage moths. So that's a really wonderful companion as well. So I will be interplanting those in here as well. The other things that I'm planting are actually going to be directly sowed into the soil. So I'm going to go ahead and plant these cabbages. So like I mentioned, spacing is so important with cabbages, but something to keep in mind, they like full sun. They like a lot of sunlight. So make sure that wherever you are placing it in the garden, they're gonna get at least 6 hours of sunlight. Something I'm also sure you have noticed is that I actually already have my mulch laid. Something that's really nice about hay and straw is that it's a really like malleable material to work with. Like it's really easy to like create space with it. I find it's much easier for me to lay the mulch down and then plant afterwards than planting everything and then laying down the mulch, because laying down straw or hay can be a bit messy and it can be a little tricky to like get it precisely around the plant. Doing it this way, you're really able to like create perfect amount of space and like sculpt the room you need to plant your plants. So first I'm going to create my little hole for my cabbage. Oh my gosh, Audrey, I'm so excited. You're gonna love it here, babe. I've actually never planted cabbage in this bed in particular, so I'm really curious to see how it does. It does get a lot of sunlight here throughout the day, but something that's different in this bed compared to the other beds on the other side of the garden, this gets early evening shade a lot earlier than the other side of the garden because we have a giant pine tree on the west side of the garden. So I'm very curious to see how that plays into this. So let me prepare the soil here. I'm gonna dig a pretty nice sized hole. Usually you want it to be like maybe 2 times bigger than the pot that the plant is in. Oh my God, look at that soil. That looks so good. Absolutely gorgeous. Stunning. Stunning. Slay, soil, slay. So I like to dig a little deeper because, like I mentioned earlier, cabbages are heavy feeders. I like to go above and beyond and give them an even greater boost of nutrients. So I like to make a little mix of amendment here with compost that I've mixed with worm castings and a little bit of organic all-purpose plant food. So I like to sprinkle that at the base of where I am planting, work it into the soil a little bit. You know, I'm gonna throw a little more in there. Well, why not? I want a big, big cabbage this year. So the more nutrients, the better. And then it's time to plant her. Ooh. Oh my gosh, look at that root system. Ah, how gorgeous. Oh my God, girl, you are going to love it in here. We're gonna plant her in there. Oh my gosh. And I like to cover the stem a little bit, really getting into the soil a bit there, just to give that added support. These are, again, pretty toughened up little seedlings, but some added support from the soil I don't think really hurts the plant. And now I like to work the hay around. Definitely be sure to give them a really good watering and soaking in so they settle in really nicely. I'm telling you, these cabbages love moisture. Isn't that right, Audrey? Oh my gosh, I hope you love it here, babe. Good luck! I did mention that we do deal with cabbage moth and cabbage worm here, a very common pest for cabbages and really anything in the brassica family. They will also go after the broccolis, kales, cauliflowers, mustards. So a really nice way to help manage, not necessarily completely control them in the garden, is to plant sacrificial crops. Sometimes I like to plant mustards or other kales around the garden, and I leave those exposed for the cabbage moths. I get some like average success with that. I don't know how to set it up so that they only go after the sacrificial crops. I still have to go through by hand and make sure I'm plucking the worms off of all of my brassicas, the ones that I definitely want to grow and keep, just to make sure I don't lose any of my precious crop. Something I do like to do while they are still in their younger stages, I have these little tents, these little mesh cages that I like to put over them. This keeps the cabbage moth out and any other little pesky critter that might want to chew on the leaves. This is very temporary because they will outgrow these very quickly. I do have larger mesh cages or tents, and as they grow, I just upgrade the cage to fit them accordingly. We are very against the use of persistent synthetic pesticides and chemicals in the garden, so we try to do everything as naturally and eco-friendly as possible. Now, if it does get to that point where the cabbage moths are just so unmanageable, the only thing I would ever spray on my cabbages is this thing called I believe it's Buricide, BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. It's actually a bacteria that comes in liquid form. I mix it in a sprayer and I literally have to go around and spray all of my plants with it. It's a bacteria that actually tricks the cabbage worm into thinking that they're full so that they essentially starve to death. It is relatively harmless to every other thing in the garden and to us. The only thing that I don't like about spraying is that you have to stay really on top of it and like consistently go around spraying, especially after it rains. But at this point, I want my cabbages, so I'm gonna do what I need to do to make sure I get my cabbages. My cabbages! Something I do want to note with cabbages and really any vegetable that you plant in the garden, remember how I scooped in some compost and all-purpose plant food at the base of the hole before planting these? That is going to give these plants plenty of nutrients to grow for now. As these plants grow, they are using up those nutrients. So at some point, maybe like a month and a half in, I would get on a regular feeding schedule, like every 2 weeks, sprinkle around some more organic plant food, or I do make a comfrey tea fertilizer that I love to feed my plants. So yeah, just keep in mind that you will need to feed your plants throughout the season as well. These are also plants that really benefit from consistent watering. Like I mentioned in the beginning, they love moisture. The only thing I would keep in mind when watering is I would water directly into their root system. Um, I wouldn't necessarily do much overhead watering. They are designed literally to capture water with their large leaves. But if you are going to have a particularly hot day with like really intense full sun, I would just go straight to the root to give it where they need it the most, to really give your plant what it needs to endure a hot day. I water my cabbages daily until it's time to harvest. Um, I really, I really appreciate rainy weeks because that is literally the environment that they thrive in. They love when it rains. Another thing I would really like to mention is as your plant grows, it's very common, it's very possible, it's a very natural part of the process for like the older leaves to yellow or brown off. Do not be afraid to prune those off to keep all of the healthiest leaves on the plant. Those dying leaves just end up taking energy from the plant, so don't be afraid to snip them off. With that, I think we've just about covered everything that we do here to plant and prepare our cabbages for all the abundance in the growing season. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope this inspired you to get out there and grow some cabbages. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please drop an abundance, and we will see you on the next video. Bye, y'all.